Hi everyone, today I've got the incredible Draupedi with us. Draupedi, please could you introduce yourself and share how you were drawn to Avalon?
Hello everybody, my name's Draupedi and this is Babushka, my little dragon familiar from Thailand. She's an Avalon dragon. I've lived in Avalon for 25 years and I had heard about Avalon long time before, and I don't actually read books very often. I was kind of labelled as dyslexic at school and very rarely managed to read a book, but when I was 22 this book came to me called The Mists of Avalon, and I just felt so drawn to read this book, and so I did, and I actually read it cover to cover, and in that time it was like a recapitulation. I kept goosebumping and crying and kind of remembering. It felt like a lifetime of being here, of living here. And at that time, in my early 20s, I wasn't really spiritual or anything, but it was just this deep kind of soul knowing about, remembering about Avalon and the sacredness of Avalon. And then a few years later, I went in and out of quite a long story of heroin addiction and alcohol in a necessity to shut down, actually, because this world felt like a very cruel place, and if you were quite different, it felt that there wasn't really room for people that were really expressive. So that led me to kind of shutting down, and I remember I was at Glastonbury Festival. I think I was 24, and I accidentally took an overdose, and that then led me to a clean-up, and then coming here and going up the tour. So even though I'd been to Glastonbury Festival like several times, I'd never actually been into the town of Glastonbury, and it was my first time up the tour, and just all this kind of magic started happening. And then anyway, a few years later, I left, and then a few years later, I was living in a truck with my daughter, who was 8 at the time, and she was getting pretty fed up with living on the road and going to the festivals and not going to school. And she said, "Look, Mum, I want to live in a house. I want to go to school. I want a regular life." And I thought, oh God, how are we going to do that? So I came here because I had 2 friends who lived here who were both Krishna devotees. So I came and visited them, and I was looking around thinking, I really actually like this place. It's quite amazing. And I said to one of them, so how do you go about getting somewhere to live here in Glastonbury? And she said, "Oh, Draupedi, it takes people months, years sometimes, but if the goddess wants you, you'll get a place." And then she went. So I walked down the road and I bumped into a guy who I just decided to ask him how I'd go about finding a place. And he said, "I'm just handing you my notice. I've got a 2-bedroom house with a garden. Do you want to come with me?" So it was literally an hour. I kind of landed, thought I could actually live here, to actually having a place. So I knew then that, the goddess had called me. And and that was 25 years ago.
How do you experience and express your spiritual path day to day in Avalon?
I guess I'm part of an Avalon Kirtan tribe, Bhakti tribe. So about 17 years ago, I had another relapse within the first year of coming to Glastonbury. I split up with my partner at the time, and I had this 4-year relapse, which was literally like being thrown into the cauldron of Ceridwen. And once I got to know a few people here, I kind of understood that often Avalon, the goddess, calls you in, and then you go through the mincer. So that's kind of what happened. And then when I came out of that, I started meeting all these like really amazing people, and then ended up living at the ashram, at Shekin Ashram, that's now unfortunately closed. It closed 2 years ago. But that's really when my life started taking a whole other kind of dimension. So for me, how I experience the goddess really is, I feel that I've got a very close personal relationship with Nimue, who I understand, that's who I understand the Lady of Avalon to be called. And I experience her communicating with me. I experience her through the land, through the River Brue. Went to Tintagel many years ago, and in Tintagel there's a very strange place called King Arthur's Court. And there are these incredible stained glass windows, and one of them is the Lady of the Lake with Merlin in the background. And I remember going there, I just moved to Avalon actually, and just seeing her, and in that second the sun came round and shone through a crystal in her forehead into my third eye, and I just burst into tears. And I knew then that I was in service to the Lady of Avalon. So wherever I go on the planet, I always bring her in my openings and closing ceremonies and all the ceremonial work that I do. So what I kind of do here is a group of us go up the Tor every Sunday, and we hold a puja, we sing kirtan. I also walk with the sacred medicines, which is such a deep, deep honour and gift. And we also go out, we've got a sisterhood group, we go out on the land, we take crystals, we pray into them, we sing, we reactivate the ley lines. There's so many ways actually. And after I left the ashram, a rented house came to me on the side of Glastonbury Tor, and I was just getting all these downloads of what to do. And you know, I know that Glastonbury, Avalon is such a magnet for women, particularly. We're a bit short on the brothers, could do with some more aligned brothers. But I could see that there were all these like amazing goddess priestessy things going on, but there wasn't like an ashram, like a center where women from all different denominations were actually living together and creating sacred ceremony for the land, and also the honouring of the masculine and the feminine. So all these downloads came, and I created a women's community that was called the Soulfire Heart Centre. And we had many women would come, some of them long term, some of them short term. And we had a sacred temple, a yurt, which lots of women shaman would come and do medicine work. We had a huge half moon altar, and we had lots of ceremonies in all of the different times of the year. We had a blood garden. So we had this I made this huge great garden with heart shape with all bright red flowers, and sisters could come up in their moon time, put their moon blood on the garden, and all of those things that I didn't know, I hadn't learnt about any of them. There were downloads of rememberings, and then I'd find out afterwards about blood gardens, and we had a sweat lodge, and we did a lot of really good work up there actually for 4.5 years. And then the landlord took the place back, and then my travelling started happening more. But that magic has gone deep into the land there, and it's very powerful and beautiful. It was a real blessing and a real teaching on so many different levels to kind of be the steward of that place for 4.5 years. I truly believe with all of my heart and soul that we've been coming here for a very long time. And many of us that are drawn here to Avalon are drawn here because we've been here before, and it's like a soul retrieval. So I'm not a traditionalist, so to speak. I love kind of cherry picking all of the lovely jewels from the different paths that resonate and weave this great, beautiful rainbow blanket of wisdom that resonates in a sense. And I kind of believe that that's more the Aquarian way, which is what we're now stepping into, the Aquarian time. Because the Piscean time was much more about religion and certain paths and just being on one path. And for me, I most definitely remember Native American lives. I've seen them and dreamt them, and yeah, it kind of resonates deeply with me. But then also, Druidic, and then also Krishna. When I go to India, I remember so much, and I'm in tears, and I love the pujas, I love the deities, I love deity worship. I love creating deities. I'm an artist as well. I haven't actually had time to make anything for quite some time, but I love making deities, particularly goddesses, and dressing them and, giving them horns and hair and things like that. And of course, nature, everything in nature is a deity. The trees are deities, the stones are deities, yeah.
What does the word goddess or divine feminine, when we say goddess, what does she mean to you? How do you hear her, work with her?
I think it varies so much. I mean, I'm a very visual person, and like I explained, I love personalizing the goddess in deities, and we'll probably have a little look around the temple here. There's lots of images of the goddess that I love, but I also relate to the goddess being, there's the goddess that is Avalon, basically, that from the air, that the Tor is her left breast, and we're actually on the top of her right knee here, and her left leg is Wirral Hill, and her belly is Chalice Hill, which is where I understand Anna, the mother of Mother Mary, Jeshua's grandmother, was buried. So she's actually there. If you resonate with Claire Hartsong's books, which I so do, life changing. So in that as well, and also the recognition in each other, that I see the goddess everywhere, really.
Just one last question is, how does living in Avalon, or how has being in Avalon, how does being in Avalon empower you in your sovereignty in day-to-day life? And what does sovereign mean to you?
Sovereign to me means feeling not connected to the world that we grew up in. Sovereign means to not be afraid to speak your truth and to know your truth, and to walk with courage and commitment and divinity and connection, and to really not be afraid, and to keep doing the inner work, actually, to be proud of who you are, humbly, not in a need to have to promote yourself at all. I really feel that the more you come into your sovereignty, the more you vibrate that frequency, and therefore the more you magnetize to you what is good for you and what you need and what you can help with, and you repel the things that are of a lower vibration. Because I've got some sisters who are kind of constantly going through bad relationships with narcissists, and then they don't feel worthy, and they don't, all of those emotions give off a certain frequency that then attracts more of the same. So I think, for me, sovereignty means getting to that point where you know what works for you, and you know what's certainly not going to work for you, and not to tolerate something just because you feel you should, or you ought to, or you don't feel good enough to ask for something better. And it's a magical flow, because when we're really resonating and vibrating on the frequency that our soul is vibrating on, then everything's magic. We get out of our own way, and suddenly the person that you absolutely needed to hear what they've got to say is right there, or it's like this magical flow. And I kind of feel that, especially in this digital time that's getting more and more digital as we speak, I feel that a lot of people are coming out of that sovereignty because they're in this digital world. Like, I hear about all these influencers, Instagram influencers, and think, like, what is that? It's just, for me personally, doesn't resonate. I feel that we need to find our own way, and of course, listen to people that have got wisdom that resonates with us, and grow and learn. But the whole thing of being an influencer is like, what are you influencing? Yeah. Why do you need to influence? Just be who you are. Not to need to be seen or to prove anything, to just authentically be yourself and be happy in that. Be happy to sit in that place.
Draupedi, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing with us. On behalf of everyone who watches this on the Goddess Conference page, thank you for sharing. And we look forward to seeing you at the conference. Thank you so much, Ria.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honour. And hello, everybody.